Hello, and welcome to my perspective on the Castlevania series, starting with the first one, obviously. I played this on rental time in early '88. Well, I don't hate the game. I mean, I know I mock it a lot in my previous videos and playthroughs, but if I'm being completely fair and honest, despite my negativity towards it in commentary, it's not a totally bad game. I mean, it's not a favorite, that much is certain. But I do have it on both my 3DS Virtual Console and on the Switch Anniversary Collection, so yeah, it's not as abysmal as I sometimes joke about it being. Wait, why ain't my? Hold on, it ain't working. What the hell? Oh, okay, you gotta highlight it for that. Yes. I mean, it is an okay game, but on the linearity, it's always like a lot of games of the '80s. It's always the same levels in the same order with no chance of doing anything different. Same enemies and the same patterns. So it's one of those games you just got to play it enough until you remember where the enemies are going to be, how they're going to react. Once you've played it enough times, you can ace the game like speedrunners do. I mean, I've seen speedrunners that can beat the game in like 20 minutes or less, which is purely amazing in my opinion. It shows how many times you played the game. Of course, I may have exaggerated that time. I don't know. I've never really looked into it, but I do remember people beating it a lot faster than I ever will be able to. And if I'm being completely fair, I might do a playthrough of this game for my channel at some point. I'm not going to completely promise that I will, but I'm not going to totally rule out the possibility either. Because again, it's not my favorite game, but despite my sometimes ranting against it, it's not exactly the least favorite either. Just I'm not a fan of games that this difficult as this game is towards the end of it. I mean, call me a wuss if you will, but by the way, who put that, well, it looks like a chicken, but it's called a pork chop in the instruction manual. Who put that there and who would want to eat it? You found it in an old castle inside a wall. Who knows how long it's been there or how many bugs have crawled on it. Who would want to eat it? Yeah. But anyways, as I was saying, I'm just not a fan of brutally difficult games like Ghosts and Goblins or two-hit deaths and you're dead, which is kind of ironic. I love the early Mario games that are of that same formula. Get hit twice and you're dead. First hit you shrink, you lose your power up and you shrink. Second hit you're dead. So it's in that regards, it's not any different than Ghosts and Goblins, but Mario games are always a lot easier. So yeah. So yeah, again, call me a wuss if you will, but I just cannot enjoy playing a game that's brutally difficult. I mean, that's why I get over-leveled in so many RPGs I play. Well, that because of that and the fact that I just like grinding. I like watching my party get stronger, but I just cannot have fun with the game when it's kicking my butt, figuratively speaking. Again, call me whatever dirty word you will for saying that, but yeah. This game, if I ever do a playthrough of it, I can breeze through these first levels as you've been seeing just now. But the last few levels, oh good god, that's probably going to be like a couple hours. Be like, god, what was that? Derek Bittner. Used to be of Game Explain YouTube channel. A few years ago now, he did a series of streams through the entire Castlevania series. Plays this one to start it. Does fine for the first few levels, and then just as I would be if I did a playthrough of it, the last few levels take up the majority of that video playthrough. Again, I'm not insulting him for that. Far from it. I'll be the same way if I ever do a playthrough of this, which I'm not going to do right now. So I'm going to put this down and move on to the next game. Well, Castlevania 1 was an okay game. A little too difficult at times for my liking, but it was still a good game, still fun to play. This was the game that truly catapulted my interest in the Castlevania series, whereas the first game was stiflingly, or okay, that's not a good word to use there, but was annoyingly linear. This game was quite open. You can go through the dungeons or mansions, as they call them here, in pretty much any order you choose to. The kind of game I like to play. That's why games like Breath of the Wild are so, why I like that game so much. Anyways, I already did a full playthrough of this game for my channel, so there's really not much more I can add about it now that I didn't already point out then. I mean, common consensus amongst Castlevania fans is against me on this one. Most of the people I've ever known, even back in the day in 1988, 1989, most of the Castlevania fans I've ever known or talked to over the internet in later years hate this game. Yeah. So I'm definitely in the minority with my liking for this game there, but that's okay. I can live with that. I still say this is the best game of the NES trilogy of Castlevanias. But again, like I said, I already did a full playthrough of this game for my YouTube channel, so there's really not much more to add about the game that I didn't already say there. So, moving on to the next one. Released in late 1990, Castlevania 3, which storyline-wise is a prequel. Again, like I said in some of my other videos, this was the day where they liked doing that. Dragon Quest 1 started the story. Dragon Warrior Dragon Quest 2 was a sequel set 100 years later. Dragon Quest 3 was a prequel. Yeah. Zelda, the same way. The first game started the story. Zelda 2 sequel did 7 years late, set 7 years after. And the third Zelda game, although it wasn't numbered, A Link to the Past, was a prequel to the... Yeah. And then Castlevania the same way. I mean, they liked doing that back in those days. That having been said, gameplay-wise, I mean, they broke off, they tried to take care of the linear problem with branching paths, and, they had introduced assistant, like Sypha, the mage, wizard, Grant, whatever, hunchback, whatever he's supposed to be, that could cling to walls and ceilings. And of course, Alucard, Dracula's son. Dracula spelled backward, Alucard. Which, is kind of silly. They didn't get that from, they didn't come up with this. That's from, that's from the old 1930s Dracula movies. I mean, makes sense since the entire Castlevania series was inspired by those Universal horror films of the 1930s, Dracula, Frankenstein, Mummy. That was a major influence for the entire Castlevania series. Much like how Aliens was, for Metroid. Anyways, they tried to break off, do something about the linear issue with that. But overall, yeah. Since his name is supposed to be Trevor, Simon Belmont, the main protagonist of the first two games in release order, his grandfather or great-grandfather. No. It's an okay game, but that's just it. It's only okay. Definitely not one of my favorites. And again, if you disagree, like all of my opinions I've ever stressed in these videos are my full playthrough videos. If you disagree, that's fine. To each their own. No two people are going to agree on everything anyways, so. And I stress that, especially for this game's case, because there's a lot of people that love this game. People I've known personally over the years, or people that I've talked to over the internet, Twitch streamers that I've watched, would swear that this is the best game of the NES trilogy. So often I've heard the opinion that Castlevania 1 was good, this game is good, Castlevania 2 is skippable. I disagree strongly with that. Seems to be a common consensus amongst classic Castlevania fans, so. And it's ironic, I've heard that the American version that I'm playing is actually harder than the Japanese. Back in those days especially, that was kind of odd when you consider like Super Mario 2 Japan, aka the American lost levels. was much more brutal than Doki Doki Panic reskinned as American Super Mario 2 ever was. Or look at Final Fantasy IV, even though I hate that game. Easily my least favorite Final Fantasy game. The American version, no, super easy compared to the Japanese original. Yet this game, the Japanese is easier. The American was, well actually, from what I've heard, it's not necessarily easier, just more forgiving and continuous. Which in turn does kind of make the game easier, so yeah. Anyways, I did play this game at the time in 1991. Wasn't too impressed by it, so yeah. Just not a fan of the classic Castlevania platformer type game. I'm more a fan of the Metroidvania, which in and of itself is kind of weird when I thought about it, because the Metroidvania games are still platformers at their core. They just add, they just have more, more gameplay added to it than just tip. Yeah. Okay, that's not the best way of putting that, but yeah, Metroidvania games for the most part are still platformers technically. So to say I'm not a fan of platforming games is kind of defeated by that. Kind of funny how that works out, but anyways, okay game, not one of my favorites, but I could play it at any time if I really wanted to. It's not a game that that I'm repulsed at just the thought of playing again, like Twilight Princess, Zelda game. And that game, for that game, insert AVGN analogies of I'd rather do this or that than play that game again. Well, I wouldn't stoop that low, but yeah, Twilight Princess is definitely a game. This, on the other hand, much better. Of course, to say a game is better than Twilight Princess, in my opinion, isn't saying much. Playing no games at all is better than playing Twilight Princess. But anyways, enough about that game. If you can. As for Castlevania, the next game, released at some point in the early 90s. Oh, on pause. Released in December of 1991. Just looked it up, so I paused the video. I knew at some point in the early 90s it was one of the earlier titles for the Super Nintendo. It wasn't the launch title, but I do remember it came out within a half a year of the Super Nintendo itself being launched, being released. And this is actually the second attempt at recording this retrospective video. When I got to this point in the first attempt at, I said some things in regards to this game that I wish I hadn't said. Ashamed of myself for even saying them, and there's no way I could upload that video with those comments still on it. I don't like this game, but no one who does is crazy, contrary to what I apologize for even having said that on a video that I'm never going to release. Nobody is crazy for what games they like. Screw myself. Again, I apologize for a comment. I, on the other hand, do not like this game. The NES games, maybe it's nostalgia speaking, how many times I played them, but this game, on the other hand, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the more deceptive uses of the word super. Nothing super about this game. It's supposed to be a remake of the first game. This is one of those cases like Majora's Mask, where the original is much better than the remake. Or Final Fantasy VII, a case of where the original is much better than the remake. Again, since it's supposed to be a remake, his name is supposed to be Simon, so... Personally, I don't see, this would be more like a reimagining, kind of like the 3DS version of Metroid 2, based on the same game, but totally different in terms of level design. Well, actually, Metroid 2 Samus Returns isn't totally different in level design, but they did change a lot of the layouts for that game. This would kind of be that same thing. I mean, if you play the original NES Castlevania game, then you play this one. unless maybe this was supposed to be a remake of the arcade original that the NES was a port of. Okay, come on. Oh, helps if you hit the right button combo. I mean, to be fair, this game does have some pretty good music. And the controls are a lot smoother, so to speak. Not as, well, stiff, for lack of a better word, usage. So it's a better designed game in that regard. But, yeah. Actually, as I sit here playing it now, suddenly starting to think that maybe I've been overreacting all these decades. Maybe this game ain't as bad as I had always said it was. Of course, I'm only in the introduction stages, so yeah. The difficulty hasn't truly ramped up yet. As this game can be quite brutal, like any classic Castlevania game. Which, like I said before, is why I never really got into them. I mean, again, call me a wuss, but I just cannot have fun with a game that's brutally kicking my butt, figuratively speaking. If that's your thing, then more power to you, but not me. Anyways, yeah. An okay game, but still, I don't think it just, again, I get it, it's called Super because it's on the Super Nintendo, kind of like how so many N64 games had 64 in them, or so many, Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Donkey Kong 64, yeah. So many Super Nintendo games had the word Super in them because they were Super Nintendo games. I get that. Yeah. Anyways, it's because of my dislike for this game that I kind of gave a cold shoulder, cringe to the entire Castlevania series, minus the first 3 games, for the next 20 years rather, which I regret now looking back at it, as there were some good games during that time. But, the next game that I recall, I mean, I could be wrong on that. Of course, I'm not counting in this, by the way, the Game Boy games, as I haven't played them. I can only talk about the games I've played. They were on the Game Boy. And again, while I respect the Game Boy for its contributions and its impact on handheld gaming for the time, like I've said in other videos, I just couldn't play that thing for more than an hour without getting a headache staring at that little tiny black and white or black and pale green screen for more than an hour. So I never got into any of the Game Boy games, Metroid 2, Link's Awakening. If it was on the Game Boy, chances are I never played it. So Belmont's Revenge, Castlevania The Adventure, never played those. Not because they were Castlevania games, but because they were on the Game Boy. And as of right now, the point of these videos is just to talk about the games I have played, so yeah. Anyways, with that having been pointed out, the next game that I recall was Rondo of Blood, Castle X, whatever they called it, also for the Super Nintendo, eventually. That game, I'm not even going to show that game, because I don't have it to show, to be honest. I mean, I do have it, but only on my Switch, and no capture for that. Then came, well, a game that had a whole new term entered into video game lore. Okay, that did come out right, but for the Sony PlayStation in 1997, Symphony of the Night, a game that I truly regret not playing at the time. But again, this was, during that time when I would just, Castlevania, no thank you, I'd rather not. Of course, this game, a Castlevania game that plays like a Metroid game, yeah, hence the term Metroidvania. Yeah, like I tried to say, this was the mother of the Metroidvania game, so to speak. The game that the entire term was coined for in the first place. And why ain't my controller working again? What the heck? Oh, there it goes. Of course, I haven't played this game in a while. Someday I'll get around to doing a full playthrough of this game, but for now, the original Castlevania Metroidvania style game that so many of the future Castlevania games would try to duplicate. In this game, you're playing as Alucard, a unique twist. You're not playing as a Belmont or some relative of the Belmonts, but as the son of Dracula trying to fight against his father. You have an arsenal of weapons, not just the whip. So yeah, where the Metroidvania franchise really began. Simon's Quest was kind of a prototype, but again, I really wish I had played this game at the time in the late 90s. Of course, now that I think about that, even if I had been more interested in Castlevania by the late 90s, this came out in 1997, around the same time Final Fantasy VII did. And I probably would have been too busy playing Final Fantasy VII to even play too much of this game. Of course, the next game that came out, as far as I can remember, again, I might be wrong about the chronology, and if I am, correct me in the comments. The next game that came out on a major console, not counting Game Boy games, I think, was the N64 Castlevania games, which are okay games. The camera angle, like a lot of early 3D games, the camera angle is sometimes a bigger enemy than the enemies are in those games. I've never played them, which is why I'm not even going to bother showing footage of them. But I've seen people playing them, and from what I've seen, they don't look as bad as some people make them out to be, kind of like Castlevania 2 or Zelda 2. The hatred for those games seems to be a little misplaced, but yeah. The next Castlevania game following this one that I did play, well, I didn't play this one either. So actually, now that I think about it, I didn't play, so I'm not showing footage of it, because I like this game now that I have played it, I guess. But yeah. Released on the Game Boy Advance in June of 2001, the first of 3 Castlevania games on the GBA, Circle of the Moon. I didn't play this game at the time, but I have played it in recent years on the Castlevania Advance collection on the Switch. And I would have to say this would be my least favorite of the Metroidvania style games. Oh, come on, what the hell? Okay, well, Nathan is supposed to be the character's default name. So not that it matters, you're going to be called Nathan by that default name regardless of what you put here, actually. But again, if for the most part, I try to put that name if they have one. So actually, that ain't always true either. Now that I think about it. But anyways. Of course, all this is meaningless since, as it turns out, this isn't even canonical by Castlevania timeline standards. This game isn't even mentioned, at least not in any of the Castlevania timelines I've ever seen printouts of. 1830? Yeah, not in the... Camellia. She's supposed to be the character from the animated series recently. Of course, this game came out like 15 years before that. I mean, this was 01. That actually 16 years. Castlevania Netflix anime was 2017. Morris, Baldwin. Where's Alec? Beetlejuice. Yeah. Okay. And of course, video game characters can survive falls of extreme heights that in real life you would have died probably before you even hit the ground from heart failure. Anyways, a lot of text. I mean, Harmony of Dissonance had that too, so before you even started the game. So did Aria of Sorrow, so you know, I can't hold that against this game. Again, an okay game for the Metroidvania style Castlevania games. But, eh. Of course, it was the next game. I mean, I remember hearing on some YouTube video, or no, actually, it wouldn't have been YouTube. That didn't exist yet. But remember reading in some internet article about the next Castlevania game being a sequel to Castlevania 2, set 50 years later. That's all I needed to see. That's all I needed to hear. I bought this game right away after hearing that. Figured, even if it is as abysmal as Super, quote unquote, Super Castlevania 4, at least it's a sequel to Castlevania 2 so storyline wise they got it right, or something to that effect. Bought it. Of course, I've already done a complete playthrough. Actually, I'm still uploading those videos. So again, there's not much more I can add to it than what I already said there. But yeah, the game that dang it, sorry. The game that brought back my interest in the Castlevania series after what, 11 years, 11 years, 1991 to 2002. Again, there's not much more I can add about this game since I already did a full playthrough of it. Haven't uploaded all of those videos yet. Good game. In my opinion, better than any of the Castlevania games that had come out since Symphony of the Night, which I never played at the time anyways. The next game following Harmony, also on the Game Boy Advance in May 2003, was in my opinion the best of the three. I mean, Harmony of Dissonance brought back my interest in Castlevania games after 11 years absence. But, and while I do still like Harmony of Dissonance for that and being a good game, this one is just slightly better in my opinion. Aria of Sorrow. I've already recorded a full playthrough of this video for my YouTube channel. Haven't started uploading those videos yet. Yeah. I don't have any. Alright, fine. They're all save files from different points in that playthrough I just mentioned. But since that's done and already recorded, no need to save the save files anymore. So normal. I know I just said in previous part of this video that I try to keep the default names, but as I was saying that, I realized it doesn't matter. Whatever you put as a name here, you're going to be called by the default name anyway, just like in Portrait of Ruin. Or yes. Or the first two Zelda games. Yeah, set 2035. Futuristic. Well, not really in terms of year, but still Dracula's castle, so. Okay, skipping the dialogue intro. Again, I go into more detail on things that are happening here on screen in my playthrough of the game, so. Some of the best music in Castlevania games here in this game. Of course, as I point out numerous times in my playthrough of the game, once I start uploading those videos, is that while I do love this game, as almost every enemy has a soul ability you can get from them, but grinding for them can sometimes take an eternity. And if you care about being low leveled in terms of experience and not being over leveled, you don't want to grind for all of them. You'll end up, just on the playthrough I just did that I haven't started uploading yet, I ended up at like level 80, something like that, by the time I was done just trying to 100% the game. So yeah. Item drop rate is ridiculously annoying. Other than that, good game. Of course, the next Castlevania game to be released would be on the PS2, Lament of Innocence, the aforementioned prequel. As of still today, the earliest game in the Castlevania timeline that I'm aware of anyways. Probably always will be, since Konami doesn't seem to want to make any more Castlevania games. Closest we've had in the last few years would be Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which, as I understand, was made by some of the people who made the recent Metroidvania-style Castlevania games. Makes sense, because that game sure plays like a Metroidvania game. No. So yeah, of course, it was on the PS2. One reason I didn't play it is by October of 2003, I'd already sold my PS2 to my younger brother. One of my younger brothers, that is, more correctly put that. Who in turn ended up pawning it off because he needed money. Had I known he was going to do that, I wouldn't have bothered. I sold it to him because I figured it'd still be in the house. I could maybe still play it, sometimes. Yeah. Anyways, I've long since gotten over that. That was friggin' 19 years ago now. I mean, if I'm still holding a grudge over that, screw me. Just thought I'd mention that since I talked about how I no longer have my PS2, and that's the reason why. The next game that came out that I actually played, following Aria of Sorrow, the next Castlevania game to be released that I played, was its direct sequel, Dawn of Sorrow, on the Nintendo DS in October of 2005. The first of three Nintendo DS Castlevania games, along with Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia, or Ecclesia, however you pronounce that word. Of course, again, this is a direct sequel to Aria of Sorrow, the Game Boy Advance game set 1 year later, featuring all of the same characters from that game. Of course, earlier I posted a video asking a question about the potential of doing a playthrough of this game. Nobody seemed to watch it or comment on it. I do want to do a playthrough of this game for my YouTube channel, but, well, since since it was on the Nintendo DS and everybody was stylish and crazy in those days, one of this game's mechanics is that, drawing symbols to finish off boss battles. If I am going to do a playthrough of this game, I'm going to be using either a mod or just a Game Shark code to cheese that. Would anybody watching that be okay with that, or should I just skip on this game? I mean, I would love to do a playthrough of it, but the idea of having to draw some silly symbol to finish off a boss battle just isn't for me, especially if I have to do it legitimately. Yeah, Def Leppard. Yeah. Me and my 80s rock references, I know. Of course, that looks rather abysmal. I never have been the best at drawing with the... Yeah. Another game that has some pretty damn good music. Sorry, excuse my language. Darn good music. Gameplay is good too, except for that having to draw symbols to complete boss battles. But yeah, again, reiterating or re-emphasizing the question, if I was to do a playthrough of this game, would anybody watching be okay with me cheesing the drawing symbols bit? Or would I hear in the comments for every video about how I'm cheating the game? Which I technically would be, so I guess I would deserve that kind of commentary, but still. Of course, if I'm being critical, one of the things I mentioned just now about Aria of Sorrow is carried over in this game. You get those same abilities from pretty much every enemy, but sometimes that's easier said than done because of the extremely low item drop rate from enemies. If you're going to try to 100% the game, you'll end up drastically over leveled in the attempt to do so. Just like Aria of Sorrow. But anyways, really good game. Rated up there in the top 5, my top 5. Granted, I've never really thought of the top 5, but if I was, it'd be something like Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, this game, Castlevania 2, not necessarily in that set order, but Castlevania 2, Aria of Sorrow, Harmony of Dissonance, this game. Actually, it'd have to be a top 10 because Symphony of the Night would have to be in there somewhere as well. Anyways, that'll be something for another video sometime later. Top 10 games of each series. Most of which I'd have to give some serious thought and not just quickly put together a list for the sake of doing so, but actually put some thought behind it. Point being, this is easily one of my favorite games in the Castlevania series. The music, the gameplay, Metroidvania style. Yeah. But it would be the next game following this one. Released also on the Nintendo DS in late 2006. I already did a full playthrough of this game, including post-game material on my YouTube channel. Yeah, Portrait of Ruin. To me, not only by far the best Castlevania game, but one of the 10 best video games of all time, period. And again, like Castlevania 2 or Harmony of Dissonance, since I've already done a complete playthrough of the game, there's really not much more to add that I didn't already state a couple times over then, so And this, not counting like the aforementioned Ritual of the Night, this is the last Castlevania game. Well, I did play Order of Ecclesia, but wasn't really impressed with it because of the blip system. This is the last Castlevania game I played that, in my opinion, is really worth mentioning. Sorry if you disagree with that. You know, again, matter of opinions. We all have one. You know, no two people are going to agree on everything. Blah blah blah. But yeah, in my opinion, this was also the last Castlevania game really truly worth playing. So this is where I end the video. My look at the Castlevania game series, such as it is so far, and seemingly will always be, as again, Konami doesn't seem to be too willing to make any more Castlevania games anymore. So unless they either get, you know, unless they either regenerate that interest to make Castlevania games or sell the rights to the franchise off to somebody who does want to make more Castlevania games. Until either of those two happen, yeah, sadly we'll probably never ever see another Castlevania game again. Sucks, but unfortunately that seems to be the reality of it. Castlevania seems to be a done deal as far as new games go. Yeah. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching. If you don't agree with my comments, at least try to be civilized about it in the comments below. You know, in fact, I'd like to, you know, what are your favorite Castlevania games? Do you prefer the Metroidvania style games like this one, or the classic Mania like the first few? And again, the only thing I ask is that you try to be civilized, and remember, it's only video game discussion. It's not, you know, the meaning of life itself. It's not life or death. It's only video game entertainment fun. No need to be all hostile and juvenile. Which again is the reason I remade this video, because I myself stooped to that level of immaturity in the original attempt at this video, when I was talking about Super Castlevania 4. Yeah, I hate myself for even having said that kind of stuff in a video that I deleted as soon as I played it back. I'm just damn glad I watched it back before I uploaded it. I would have hated myself for all eternity. My problem, like a lot of people have, I'm sure, you get into a rant about something and sometimes the mouth works faster than the mind does, or however you want to put that. You say things that you almost instantly wish you could take back. Only a lot of times you don't have that because you're talking to the person directly, and once it's said, you can't take it back. Whereas I at least have the luxury of deleting that video and never letting anyone else ever hear it. Anyways, I digress. Thanks for watching, and see you next time, as this will be the last of the retrospective videos by franchises. I've pretty much covered all of the franchises. I mean, there's Etrian Odyssey, I suppose, but I only started playing those games a few years ago on the DS remake of Part, or 3DS rather, 3DS remake of Part 2, and then Etrian Odyssey Nexus, the next new game that came out after that. So I don't really have much nostalgia for that series. I mean, the series itself only started in 2007 on the DS, a year after this game came out. So overall, the series isn't even that old in the first place. So yeah, I'm probably not going to do a video on that series, since I really don't have much nostalgia for it. I do like some of the games, but yeah. Mega Man, I never really got into those games. Like any 80s gamer, I tried Mega Man games. I really did, just couldn't get into them. Not necessarily linear, because you had the level select idea, but just, I don't know, maybe I was just too eager to play Zelda again and again, or whatever other game was new at that time. Anyways, I digress, and this will be the last of the series retrospective videos. So thanks for watching, and see you next time. For real this time. Bye.